Welcome, dearly beloved anointed ones. When God wants to expose the hearts of men, he sends them a chosen one wrapped in pain, not perfection. Some laughed, some watched like it was a free reality show, and some clapped, but only when you fell. Here's the twist. Your suffering wasn't just personal, it was judicial. While you were battling depression, financial drought, betrayal, and silent nights where even your shadow seemed to abandon you, heaven was watching and documenting. Not for likes, not for revenge, for justice. Did you know? In ancient Jewish tradition, the heavenly court was believed to sit in session during moments of great suffering, not for the guilty, but to weigh the hearts of the bystanders. Yes, your pain put them on trial. You were the test, not the punishment. And while they laughed like your downfall was permanent, what they didn't realize was they were sitting in the courtroom as defendants. Because the chosen ones, they don't stay down, they rise with receipts, rulings, and redemption. Stay with me. This isn't a pity party, it's a public unveiling. Because now, the unseen courtroom has ruled. Number one, they mistook your breaking point for entertainment, failing to realize it was heaven's final audit of their hearts. They thought your breaking point was funny. They watched you unravel, stumble, cry, and question everything, and they smirked like it was entertainment. Some even pulled up a front row seat, whispered behind your back, made jokes, and acted like it was just another chapter in your drama. What they didn't know was that your breaking point wasn't about you falling apart, it was about them being watched. Not by you, but by the unseen. Your suffering wasn't random. It was a mirror, a test, a setup to reveal the intentions of the people around you, and the moment they started treating your pain like a punchline, they failed that test without even knowing it was happening. They thought your weakness gave them power. They thought because you didn't fight back or explain yourself or prove your worth that you were beneath them. But what they didn't see was that silence is often surveillance. God was collecting evidence the entire time. Every time they chose pride over compassion, ego over empathy, gossip over grace, they were making statements in a courtroom they didn't even know existed. You were not being humiliated, you were being used, not as a victim, but as a vessel. Your suffering gave people a chance to show their true character, and they failed loudly. They treated your hardship like a joke, not knowing that it was the final question on their spiritual exam. Now that the ruling has been passed, they want to act like they never laughed. They want to backpedal, rewrite the narrative, or pretend they were always rooting for you. But divine justice doesn't operate on revisionist history, it operates on truth. And the truth is, they were warned. Your struggle was the signal, the siren, the loud broadcast from heaven saying, be careful how you treat them, but they ignored it. Now it's not your breaking point they have to worry about, it's their judgment day. Number two, your pain was the prophecy in disguise, coded suffering meant to expose hidden enemies. Your pain wasn't random. It had a purpose, and it wasn't just to make you stronger. That's the surface level take people love to throw around. The truth goes deeper. Your suffering was like a secret message written in code, and only those with spiritual eyes could understand it. It was designed to flush out who was real, who was fake, and who only stood beside you when things were good. The betrayal, the disappointment, the isolation, it all served one goal, exposure. You weren't just going through things for character development, you were being used as a divine spotlight. The pressure you faced wasn't just shaping you, it was revealing everyone around you. When life got heavy, the masks started falling. People you trusted started slipping. They thought your storm gave them the green light to show you who they really were, and they were right, but not in the way they thought. Your suffering exposed their true nature, and it wasn't pretty. People love to play loyal when the blessings are flowing, but when you hit rock bottom, their real character shows. Some disappeared, some cheered quietly, some turned your vulnerability into gossip, but none of it was wasted. Your pain was a filter. It separated the ones who were for you from the ones who were just around you. And that's why it had to happen the way it did. You needed clarity, not company. You needed the truth, not applause. The people who betrayed you weren't random either. They were assigned to reveal what you couldn't see with your heart. Pain forced you to look with your spirit, and once you saw it, there was no going back. So no, your suffering wasn't just a season. It was a divine strategy to expose what couldn't come with you. Your pain wasn't a punishment. It was the key that unlocked the truth. And once that truth came out, the unseen courtroom started collecting names. Number 3. They thought the universe was neutral, but it was a courtroom in recess. They thought the universe didn't care, that life was just a cycle of random events, luck and survival. So they moved how they wanted, cold, careless, and calculated. They mistreated people, twisted truth, played dirty, and convinced themselves it was all part of the game. And because lightning didn't strike immediately, they believed they were untouchable. But what they didn't know is that just because a courtroom is quiet doesn't mean it's inactive. Sometimes it's just in recess, building the case. Judgment doesn't always come in a flash. Divine justice is surgical, not sloppy. It observes, collects, waits. It gives time, space, and rope. And in that delay, many people reveal who they really are. That's what happened. They thought the silence meant they got away with it. They thought grace was permission. They mistook mercy for absence. But every moment of delay was actually more evidence being stacked against them. The universe isn't neutral, it's patient. And that patience exposes everything. It watches how you treat people when you think no one's looking. It listens to what you say when you think someone's silence means weakness. It notes every selfish move made in the name of just doing me. And when the timing is right, it delivers not just justice, but perfectly timed justice. The kind that hits when egos are highest and masks are fully on. That's what's terrifying about divine verdicts. They're never rushed, but they're always exact. And by the time they come, the damage can't be undone. They laughed, gossiped, played innocent, and moved on like nothing happened. But the courtroom was never closed. It was just letting the case build itself, with their own actions as evidence. So now as the verdict starts unfolding in real time, they'll learn the hard way. Just because consequences are quiet doesn't mean they're not coming. And when they do, they don't knock. They arrive. Number 4. You weren't being punished. You were being profiled for spiritual promotion. You thought life was punishing you. You questioned what you did wrong, why everything kept falling apart, why it felt like every time you tried to rise, something pulled you down harder. But the truth is, you weren't being punished. You were being profiled, not by people, but by the unseen. What you were going through wasn't random, and it wasn't rejection. It was a spiritual assessment. Heaven was running an audit, checking if you could handle what you were asking for, or if you were still too tied to what needed to be cut. While others were living comfortable, predictable lives, you were thrown into chaos, pressure, and confusion. But that was the point. You were being tested differently because you were called differently. What looked like failure to the outside world was actually preparation. You weren't being overlooked. You were being stretched. And yes, it felt unfair. Yes, it felt isolating. But promotion in the unseen realm requires a level of strength, resilience, and obedience that can't be faked under pressure. The people around you saw you struggling and assumed you were finished. They thought the loss, the delay, the betrayal, the breakdowns meant you were cursed or falling off. But what they didn't understand is that some people rise through applause and others rise through fire. You were the latter. Your suffering wasn't disqualification, it was divine qualification. Every time you didn't give up, every time you kept going without recognition, every time you prayed while questioning if you were even heard, you were passing the test. Not the kind of test that gives you a certificate, but the kind that shifts your entire level of influence. You were proving to the unseen realm that you could be trusted with more, even when you had less. They saw downfall, but heaven saw readiness. And now that the process is complete, your rise won't just be a comeback, it'll be a revelation. Number 5. Your silence wasn't weakness, it was surveillance. They thought your silence meant defeat. They thought you had nothing to say because you had nothing left. But what they didn't realize is that silence isn't always surrender, it's sometimes strategy. While they were loud, reckless, and running their mouths, you were watching, listening, and learning. Every fake smile, every slick comment, every conversation they thought you didn't hear was being quietly recorded, not by a phone, but by the Spirit. Your silence wasn't you giving up. It was you stepping back and letting the truth build its own case. They expected you to fight back with noise. They were waiting for the meltdown, the angry posts, the messy fallout. But instead, you gave them nothing, and that confused them. Because people like that only understand power when it's loud. They don't know how dangerous quiet strength is. They didn't realize that your silence was actually exposing everything. You let them talk, you let them lie, you let them show who they really were when they thought they had won. And in doing so, you gave them the rope to hang themselves with. You weren't quiet because you were weak. You were quiet because you were being guided. Sometimes the loudest move you can make is to say nothing and let people bury themselves with their own behavior. That's exactly what happened. They revealed their pride, their jealousy, their need to see you lose. And you didn't need to clap back, you just had to wait. Your silence created space for heaven to act. You didn't have to prove your innocence, your worth, or your side of the story. The unseen courtroom already knew, and now, that silence they laughed at, it's screaming at them, it's following them, it's reminding them that while they were busy trying to tear you down, you were just getting ready for the next level, quietly but powerfully. Number 6, they mocked you publicly. But now heaven is rewarding you privately before it broadcasts it globally. They mocked you in front of everyone. They made your struggle a conversation, your name a punchline, your downfall a trending topic in their little circles. They didn't just doubt you, they disrespected you, publicly, loudly, repeatedly. And in those moments you felt exposed, vulnerable, humiliated. But what they didn't realize was that while they were busy putting on a show, heaven was preparing a stage, and it wasn't for them. Your rewards didn't come with noise. They came quietly behind the scenes, a shift in your mindset, a healing in your soul, a door they didn't know existed, suddenly opened just for you. They didn't see it, so they assumed it didn't happen. But favor doesn't always start with fireworks. It starts with foundation. And yours was being rebuilt where no one could interrupt it. Heaven's judgment isn't loud at first. It doesn't show up with lightning or grand announcements. It starts in silence, subtle moves, quiet shifts, sudden peace. Things start falling into place while the world's still watching your old story. And just when they think they've got you figured out, boom, you reappear, elevated, refined, and completely out of their reach. That's what makes the comeback different. It's not just about bouncing back. It's surgical, precise, unmistakable. It happens in such a calculated way that the same people who once laughed are now silent, not because they were convinced, but because they were corrected. They mocked your breakdown without knowing it was the blueprint. They laughed at your loss, unaware it was the lesson. They thought you were finished. But now, heaven has handed you a comeback that wasn't built in public opinion, but in divine timing. The same mouths that mocked you will soon have to speak your name with respect, or not speak it at all. Either way, your rise is not up for their discussion. It's already been ruled, and now it's being revealed. Number 7, your scars were sensors, not signs of defeat. Your scars weren't proof that you lost. They were proof that you lived through what others would have folded under. But more than that, they were spiritual sensors. Every time you were hurt, every time someone betrayed you, ghosted you, used you, or watched you break without offering a hand, it was more than pain. It was data. Your wounds were revealing who was really for you and who was just enjoying the benefits of being around you. Every scar carried a lesson, a signal, a truth you wouldn't have seen without it. Some people only stayed because you were winning, glowing, giving. The moment life got messy, their true colors showed. They stopped calling. They grew distant. They used your vulnerability as ammunition or gossip. But the wound they helped create ended up becoming the very thing that exposed them. That's how divine design works. The pain wasn't pointless. It separated the ones who loved you from the ones who loved your energy, your presence, your access. Big difference. You weren't losing people, you were locating them. Every scar marked a shift. One person gone, one truth revealed, one layer of illusion stripped off. And the more you bled, the clearer your vision became, the kind of clarity you couldn't buy, only bleed for. That's what made your scars sacred, not just signs of survival, but maps of wisdom. They thought you were damaged, but you were just upgraded, sharper, more aware, less naive. Because nothing reveals character like crisis, and nothing filters out the fake like your lowest moment. You didn't just survive it, you learned from it. And now you carry a level of discernment that's hard to teach and impossible to fake. So no, your scars aren't ugly, they're tools. They're evidence, they're history. And now when someone steps into your life, they don't just meet you, they meet every lesson your wounds taught you. Number 8, they studied your downfall like a case study. unaware they were the defendants. They watched your downfall with curiosity, almost excitement, like it was a documentary unfolding in real time. They dissected your pain, replayed your lowest moments, asked around, took notes, not to help but to feed their ego. They were fascinated by your struggle, treating it like a case study. They wanted to understand what went wrong, what you should have done differently, how someone like you ended up in that position. But what they didn't realize is that while they were studying you, they were the ones on trial. You were never the subject. You were the setup. Every comment they made, every time they chose to observe instead of support, every time they judged instead of empathized, they were speaking in a courtroom they couldn't see. The more they picked apart your story, the more they revealed about themselves. They thought they were analysts, but they were actually compiling evidence with every move. Evidence of pride, arrogance, jealousy, apathy, and cruelty disguised as concern. They thought their distance made them neutral. It didn't. It made them accountable. Because the truth is, your suffering was the test, and they were the ones being watched. Not for what they said when you succeeded, but how they moved when you didn't. And they failed, loudly, publicly, repeatedly, thinking they were just spectators. But in divine systems, there's no such thing as a neutral bystander, only participants, either helping or harming. Now, that evidence they unknowingly built is speaking louder than any apology ever could. And the verdict isn't based on your failure, it's based on their reaction to it. You were never the defendant, you were the measuring stick. The moment they chose analysis over compassion, the courtroom took note. And now that judgment is here, they'll wish they never studied your downfall at all, because that case they thought you were losing. It was never yours to lose. It was theirs all along. Number 9. The tears they ignored were witness testimonies in the court they couldn't see. The tears they brushed off like they were meaningless were actually silent testimonies. Evidence no one else could hear but the unseen courtroom. Every time you cried alone, every prayer whispered in the dark, every desperate moment when you felt completely broken wasn't just personal pain. It was being recorded, not by humans, but by a higher power that never misses a detail. Those tears carried stories they refused to acknowledge, stories that would one day hold weight far beyond their shallow judgments. They saw your tears as weakness or drama. They turned away or laughed, thinking those moments were private failures. But those sobs were speaking volumes in a court where human voices don't matter, but heartbeats do. The moments you felt abandoned, unheard, and invisible became the proof of your endurance and their indifference. And every prayer you sent up in the silence was a quiet demand for justice, a demand that was being answered behind the scenes. This wasn't a courtroom of noise, but of truth. The tears they ignored were the strongest evidence against them. They were witness testimonies revealing who stayed when it counted and who left when it was easiest, who offered comfort and who offered judgment, who showed love and who hid behind excuses. Their laughter drowned out your cries, but it didn't erase them. Every tear you shed was catalogued, becoming undeniable proof in a tribunal they couldn't see, couldn't hear, and couldn't escape. And when the day came for judgment, those tears would be louder than their mockery ever was, because in the end, pain is never wasted. It's never silent. It always speaks, especially when no one else will listen. Number 10. The unseen courtroom never forgets what ego tried to erase. The unseen courtroom never forgets what ego tried to erase. People often believe that ignoring their mistakes or offering hollow apologies can wipe the slate clean. But in the spiritual realm, pain left unacknowledged isn't erased or forgotten, it's etched into the ledger forever. They acted as if their pride was stronger than consequences, thinking saying sorry was optional or unnecessary. Yet the higher court isn't fooled by words that never came or remorse that was never genuine. Ego convinces them that ignoring damage done is the same as making it right. It whispers that silence equals forgiveness, that avoiding accountability protects them. But the unseen realm operates on truth, and truth demands recognition of harm before healing can happen. Every slight, every hurtful action they shrugged off without apology becomes a permanent mark, a weight on their record. They assumed they could move on without facing what they caused, because the wounds weren't visible enough to demand justice in this world. But spiritual justice doesn't rely on human timelines or feelings. It remembers every moment pain was dismissed, every apology that was withheld, and every act of indifference disguised as strength. When ego refuses to bow, the courtroom leans in closer. It doesn't accept forgetting as forgiveness. It waits for real acknowledgement, because only that can start to balance the scales. No amount of denial or deflection can erase the echoes of pain left behind, so their refusal to apologize wasn't freedom. It was debt. And in this unseen courtroom, debt always demands payment. The pain ignored doesn't disappear. It becomes the case that will not be dropped, reminding them that spiritual justice never overlooks what human ego tries to erase. Number 11, they misjudged your value because you came in raw packaging. They misjudged your value because you didn't arrive polished or packaged the way they expected. They saw the rough edges, the scars, the unfinished parts, and assumed that meant less worth. They dismissed you because you didn't shine with easy charm or flashiness. What they failed to see was that true value isn't about sparkle or showmanship. Gold doesn't introduce itself with glitter or fanfare. It's hidden deep beneath layers of pressure, heat, and time, buried, battered, and unbranded. People love to put a price tag on what's shiny and obvious, but real worth is quiet and unassuming. It's forged in the struggle no one witnesses. It's the kind of treasure you have to dig for, not the kind that sits on display begging for attention. They judged your surface without knowing the fire you had been through or the strength that forged you. The world mistakes polish for perfection and gloss for greatness, but that's just a cover. What really matters is what holds up under pressure, what keeps its integrity after being tested by storms. And you, raw, unrefined, real, were always gold in the making. The bruises and blemishes were proof, not flaws. So while they rushed to decide your worth by how you looked in the moment, the unseen knew better. They saw the value that no one else recognized. They saw the gold hidden beneath the surface, ready to shine when the time was right, without needing to announce itself. And when it does, it will be undeniable. Because true value doesn't need to scream to be heard, it simply is. Number 12. Your suffering wasn't for sympathy, it was to expose systems, cycles, and soulless spectators. Your suffering wasn't meant to earn sympathy or quick pats on the back. It wasn't about drawing attention to your pain or making people feel sorry. No, it was far bigger than that. Your struggle was a spotlight aimed at the hidden cracks in systems designed to keep people trapped, at the endless cycles of abuse and neglect that go unnoticed, and at the hollow spectators who watch misery unfold without stepping in. You weren't just chosen to survive, you were chosen to reveal. Behind your personal pain lies a deeper truth about the world around you. The injustices you faced weren't isolated incidents, but symptoms of something rotten. Systems that profit from silence, cycles that repeat because no one dares to break them, and people who pretend not to see because it's easier than confronting reality. Your suffering peeled back the veil on all that. You became a living exposé of neglect and pretense. Those who ignored you or exploited your vulnerability weren't just failing you. They were part of a larger pattern that needed to be called out. Your endurance wasn't about quietly bearing the weight. It was about shining a light on the dark corners where pain is ignored and voices are silenced. You were chosen to hold up a mirror to the broken parts of society, to force uncomfortable truths into the open. Your journey isn't just personal healing. It's a collective awakening. Your scars map the systemic failures, and your survival sends a message. The cycles can be broken, the systems can be challenged, and the spectators can no longer hide behind apathy. So your suffering wasn't just for you. It was a mission, a warning, and a catalyst. You were chosen not merely to endure, but to illuminate what was rotten and to inspire the courage to change it. Number 13. They didn't betray you, they revealed their capacity. They didn't betray you, they simply revealed their true limits. What felt like betrayal wasn't just a random act of cruelty, it was divine intelligence at work. God didn't let it happen by accident. Instead, this unveiling was a protective measure, a way to show you exactly how far someone could go before you committed your heart, your trust, or your future to them. The moment they crossed that line wasn't a failure on your part, it was a blessing in disguise. People often confuse betrayal with failure, but betrayal is really just a revelation. It exposes the ceiling of someone's character, the highest they're capable of, whether that's love, loyalty, or respect. And knowing their ceiling early means you can avoid building your life under a roof that's about to collapse. This isn't punishment or bad luck, it's wisdom disguised as pain. God's timing is precise. Instead of letting you hold on blindly and face deeper heartbreak later, the divine allowed the truth to surface while there was still time to choose differently. The betrayal was not your undoing, it was a signal, a boundary drawn by a higher power to protect you from greater harm. So when you felt stabbed in the back, understand it wasn't just cruelty, it was clarity. A chance to see who really had your back and who was never meant to stay. The lesson isn't about bitterness. It's about gratitude for the truth before it became permanent. They didn't betray you. They simply revealed their ceiling. And now with that knowledge, you're free to surround yourself with people whose ceilings match your heights. Number 14. The unseen courtroom rules in silence, but enforces with storms. The unseen courtroom doesn't make noise when it rules. Its decisions are quiet, deliberate, and invisible to the naked eye. But when it enforces those rulings, it does so with the force of storms, unstoppable, undeniable, and unforgettable. The judgment you've waited for has already been passed, but don't expect it to come wrapped in apologies or polite acknowledgements. This isn't about smoothing things over or getting closure on your timeline. Instead, expect consequences that hit harder than words ever could. Consequences designed not just to punish, but to carve themselves permanently into the pride of those who wronged you. These consequences won't always come when you want or even recognize at first. They'll arrive with precision, catching people off guard, shaking their foundations, and making sure the lesson isn't just learned, it's remembered. Apologies are optional, but consequences are inevitable. The unseen court doesn't negotiate or beg for respect. It demands accountability. It works in silence because real power doesn't need to announce itself. It moves quietly until the moment when the storm breaks, leaving no room for doubt. So don't wait for them to admit fault. Don't waste energy hoping for remorse. The true reckoning is in the consequences that refuse to be ignored, that leave a mark deeper than any apology ever could. This is justice that doesn't fade with time. It etches itself into the very pride they once flaunted, forever reminding them that no wrong goes unnoticed and no injustice escapes repayment. The unseen courtroom has already spoken. Its verdict isn't shaped by human opinions or fleeting emotions. It's carved into the very fabric of destiny. Your suffering was never wasted, your scars never meaningless, and your endurance never overlooked. What seemed like defeat was, in truth, the foundation of an unstoppable rise. Those who doubted you, mocked you, or betrayed you were only revealing their own limits. And in doing so, they paved the way for your undeniable comeback. Justice in this realm doesn't come with fanfare or empty apologies. It arrives with quiet precision and consequences that resonate far beyond the surface. So stand tall, knowing that the unseen has ruled in your favor, that every tear, every trial, and every moment of silence was building toward this moment. Your story is no longer theirs to judge. It belongs to the unstoppable force you've become. The court has spoken. Now live like the verdict is already yours. If this message spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a moment of truth and transformation. Like if you feel the power of this story, comment below to share your own journey or thoughts, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Together we rise, and your voice matters in this movement. Let's keep the conversation alive and the energy strong. Join the family, because your comeback is just beginning.